Jesus told me America will be completely destroyed on October 7th, 2027, and showed me the exact biblical prophecy we're fulfilling right now. I'm General Robert Mitchell. I died for 23 minutes during surgery. And what Christ revealed about America's final 3 years will make every Christian pack their bags tonight. 8 months ago, I never would have believed this story. As a 67-year-old retired general, I had served the United States for 35 years. I had the highest security clearances at the Pentagon, access to nuclear codes, involvement in CIA operations, knowledge of world leaders' real plans. All of this was part of my job. My family saw me as a symbol of loyalty and patriotism. In reality, I was serving the greatest deception mentioned in the Bible. But the dream I had that morning before entering the operating room changed everything. In my dream, there was a giant eagle, but its wings were broken and it was on fire. The eagle had a crown on its head with Babylon the Great written on it. I woke up drenched in sweat. After 35 years in the military, I had never had such a terrifying dream. This story began a year ago. I was going for regular checkups due to my heart problem. The doctors said surgery was necessary, but I kept postponing it. I used to joke that a general doesn't die, he just takes a breather. I had no idea how wrong I was. Throughout my career, I had been in the most dangerous places in the world. I started as a young lieutenant in the Vietnam War, continued as a Corps commander in the Gulf War, and finally served as head of strategic planning at the Pentagon. Reports that passed through my hands contained truths that ordinary citizens could never learn. But I would learn the greatest truth the day my heart stopped. The surgery began on the morning of January 15th, 2024. Triple bypass, a routine procedure. My wife Martha was in the hospital waiting room. My children Michael and Sarah were on their way. As the anesthesia took effect, my last thought was this: I protected this country for 35 years. Now my body will protect me. How wrong I was became clear at the moment of death. My heart stopped in the 3rd hour of surgery. I remember the machine sounds suddenly cutting off. Then silence, followed by the rush of panicked voices. But I was no longer there. I found myself floating on the ceiling of the operating room. Below, doctors had opened my chest and were performing heart massage. My blood was scattered everywhere, but I felt no pain. There was a strange sense of freedom inside me. It was as if I had been freed from a heavy burden. Then I started being pulled upward. I felt like I was in a tunnel, but it wasn't scary. There was a warm light in the distance, and that light was calling me to itself. I was filled with a peace I hadn't felt in years. A figure emerged from the light. I realized it was Jesus, but he was very different from the pictures in church. He was more powerful, more real, more loving. There was infinite compassion in his eyes, but also the authority I recognized as a general. Jesus said my name. His voice was like music. He welcomed me and said we needed to discuss very important things. As I approached him, I felt the meaninglessness of my entire life. I told Jesus I was sorry, that I had helped do terrible things. Jesus smiled and said he knew, but that I had realized it. That's why I was there. He said he needed to show me some things. Suddenly our surroundings changed. Something like a big screen appeared in front of us. Jesus said he first wanted me to see when this started. 1776 appeared on the screen. The founding of America. Jesus explained that America was initially founded for a good purpose, to be a refuge for freedom and religious tolerance. But he also added that the enemy made plans to steal this project very early. The scene changed. The 19th century, industrialization. Jesus showed that here America's power began to increase, but at the same time its pride grew. Then the 20th century appeared. 2 world wars. Jesus explained that America took on the role of world policeman, but this role transformed it into the Babylon the Great, mentioned in the Bible. Jesus then asked me if I knew the real purpose of the projects I worked on. The scene changed again. This time I saw a dark room. It looked like one of the most secret sections of the Pentagon. Human-like but non-human beings were gathered around the table. Their eyes were blazing with fire. Jesus explained that these were the enemy's commanders, the real rulers of America. The creatures were looking at large screens. On the screens were military bases worldwide, economic manipulations, and political intrigues. All of America's foreign policy was being managed by these beings. Jesus said America's purpose was to make other countries dependent on itself, to establish a worldwide empire, and eventually to gather the entire world under one government. This was also the beginning of the end times mentioned in the Bible. Jesus then said the most terrifying part would happen on October 7th, 2027. The scene showed the future. On that date, all of America's military bases worldwide would be attacked simultaneously. But this wasn't an ordinary war. The scene I saw was horrifying. Nuclear explosions were destroying New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. But the attackers weren't just enemy countries. America was attacking itself. Jesus showed me that America's final days would happen exactly as written in Revelation 18. I saw angels crying, "Babylon the Great has fallen, has fallen." I watched the country being completely destroyed in 1 hour, its entire economy collapsing, millions of people dying. But Jesus also showed me what would follow this destruction. After America's fall, there would be a great awakening worldwide. People would realize that their real gods weren't money, power, and technology, but only Jesus Christ. Jesus then turned to me and said that I had seen these things because he was giving me a mission. I asked what I could do, saying I was just a retired general. Jesus told me that I knew how these systems work, that I could teach people how to protect themselves. He added that I could remind them to listen to his voice. When I asked who would believe me, Jesus smiled and said some would believe, and that would be enough. A handful of awake people could awaken millions of sleeping people. Jesus then said, I must go back now. But he asked me to remember that he would always be with me. The light brightened, and I felt myself being pulled downward. When I woke up in the hospital room, the doctors were in shock. The doctor said my heart had stopped for 23 minutes, that there should have been brain damage, but all my tests were normal. Since that day, my life has completely changed. I no longer believe that America being the world's policeman is a good thing. Now I'm trying to warn people. October 7th, 2027. Don't forget this date. If you're living in America by that date, research ways to get out. If you can't get out, go to rural areas. Stay away from big cities. But most importantly, don't forget to pray. Don't break your connection with Jesus, because soon trusting in him will be the only way to survive. America may be the most powerful country in the world, but according to the Bible, the fate of Babylon the Great is clear, and that fate is now very close. I'm General Robert Mitchell, a retired commander from the Pentagon, and everything I've told you is real. Prepare, because our time is short. If you're watching this video, It's not too late yet. Reduce your attachment to America. True patriotism is seeing what really threatens your people. And most importantly, strengthen your connection with Jesus. Because soon we will see that all worldly countries are temporary, and only Jesus' kingdom is eternal. Prepare. The end times have come, and America's role is about to be completed.